Hello, LinkedIn family. Welcome to Virtual Global Leadership Podcast. It is my absolute pleasure to present to you a thought provoking discussion that promises to not only inform but also inspire. In our rapidly changing world, where the very dynamics of the work continues to shift, Shyam has positioned himself at the forefront of innovation. As the visionary founder of Go Floaters, Shyam and his company are at the vanguard of the moment that is reshaping how we approach work. Go Floaters is making its mark by offering a flexible and on demand co working solution that is not just about spaces, but also about fostering a culture of enhanced productivity and collaboration. What sets Go Floaters apart is its commitment to adaptability. In a world where the traditional 9 to 5 model is no longer the norm, Shyam's company is pioneering a shift towards a more agile and responsive approach to workspaces. This means businesses can access workspaces exactly when and where they need them, enabling them to more agile and cost effective in their operations. The impact of Go Floaters has been substantial, with over 500 forward thinking companies in India already reaping the benefits. Notably, esteemed companies like Echo, Decathlon, and ChargeBee have embraced this innovative approach to workspaces, further reinforcing the impact that Grow Floaters has had on its the business landscape. Shyam's professional journey is a remarkable testament to his determination and ambition. He began his career as a programmer analyst at Infosys, a path that led him to a series of progressively challenging roles, eventually culminating in his position as the associate of chief architect and CEO for Insurance Next venture at Cognizant Technology Solutions. Stram's trajectory showcases how dedication, hard work, and a passion for innovation can propel an individual from the beginning of their career to positions of remarkable influence and leadership. This discussion is more than just a conversation. It is an opportunity to delve deep into the world of fascinating journey of Shyam and exploring the excited developments in the world of flexible and co-working. Welcome, Shyam. How are you?
Sagar, I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. I hope you're doing well as well. And hi to all of your audience. Uh, Pleasure to be here. Honored to be here, Sagar. Thanks for hosting me and lovely introduction. Right, I was just thinking, is he talking about me or is he talking about somebody else? Right. So that's how it is like you covered it all, covered the journey, and kind of took me back in my career, made me think on the roles that I've gone through and what made me do what I've done. But yeah, happy to share my journey along here, and the struggles, the successes, right, and how we have uh, constantly adapted. Adaptation or adapting is a key word, right? And survival of the fittest is true in any, whether it's a corporate world or the startup world, or when you're in the trying to do something new, right? Adapting to the situation is the only way of survival. And then, uh, so I can talk about. We'll be happy to share what you've done, what mistakes you've done along the way, and all that. So thank you for having me here.
Welcome, Sham. Uh, I have a very simple but impactful question for you. Okay. Now, someone who has been in the corporate world, okay, that to pure corporate, right, where you're in the 9 to 5, you are in a way, let's say, mechanical, okay. Now, how that transition happened, that you are not only living that life, but also offering solutions for a flexible way of working. So, I would love to know your
Right.
transition.
Sure. Even in the corporate life, right? I think. See, I'm fundamentally a very how to say it. One, I'm a lazy person. Number two, and I'll tell you why I'm saying all of this, right? I get bored very easily with stuff, right? And I think, looking back at it, I have a huge appetite to learn something. I mean, learn something new and put myself to a new challenge every now and then, right? So I think that's kind of what shapes me as a person, I believe. So even for example, in the corporate world, if you see even though I've only spent time between two companies, Infosys and Cognizant, my role has changed almost every 1.5 years to 2 years, right? So from From being a architect, I became like a consultant. Then from being a consultant, I started to build a product within Cognizant. I started my career in mainframe technology, right, which is probably the oldest of technologies that you can imagine in I mean, what corporates use or enterprises use. And when I left my corporate job, I was working on blockchain and AI, right? So I've constantly trying to put myself to test, right, in a way. Um, can I do that, right? Can I do the next thing, right? Can I become a master of a new technology, right? Can I apply that new technology to some use, right? To make some widget out of that, right? So that's how I've always been. And the normal way of doing things has always been boring for me, right? So, for example, even at Cognizant, I never took the like if you take an MNC, 85 to 90% of the people go into project management, go into delivering projects, uh, uh, doing probably massive roles, but doing repetitive stuff over and over again, right? You do it for find it. You run it with a 50 employee team, then you run the same thing with a 200 employee team. The same you run the same thing with a 500 employee team, right? So basically, the complexity increases, but the nature of work is the same, right? But I've always kind of strayed into the roles. So anytime Cognizant would come up with a new role or a new team, I would say I want to be there. I want to be a part of it, right? So I've always done that, right? So when Cognizant decided that it wanted to be a product company, right? It wanted to also have products because it traditionally it was not known for any kind of products, right? So I said I kind of stood in the queue the first and said I want to be a product guy within Cognizant, right? So that's how it got the opportunity there, right? And then when my leaders said that hey, we want to create a team that's focused on innovation, I said I'll be the first person in the queue to do that, right? So whether I knew anything about it or not is a different story, right? I didn't know anything about any of these roles, right? I just said I'm going to be there, I'm going to do that, right? So that's how my corporate career also has advanced in the last, I mean, till I quit Cognizant, right? But at some point in time, it came to a point where I didn't have too many options, right? Uh, I know I'm using a very cliched word, but it's very lonely at the top, right? You don't have too many options when you are senior enough in a company, right? When you're junior, you can grow horizontally, you can try different things, but as you keep growing, as you keep getting promoted, when you go to the top, you find yourself stuck with a few options, right? Because you're aligned to the company's vision, mission, and you can only do so many things with that, right? So when I thought, hey, what do I do next, right? So I'm at a point where I've already done what I wanted to do. I don't see anything new that I can do within Cognizant that is going to kind of put me to that challenge or put me to that test. I don't want to do things that I find it to be not stimulating enough for me. So which is when kind of I chanced upon the opportunity of being an entrepreneur. I didn't know anything about startups. I didn't know anything about being an entrepreneur. I mean, entrepreneur for me was businessman, right? You had to be a businessman. You had to uh, deal with, I mean, I mean, goods and stuff and trading. So my definition of what businessman was like very archaic, right? Um, which is when in 2014 I got the opportunity to visit. I was part of. I was a Fulbright scholar, so I was in the US for 3.5 4 months in Tepper School of Business, Carnegie Mellon University. I got to visit the Pittsburgh startup ecosystem, the accelerator, I mean, CMU's accelerator, right? And we were taken to the Bay Area where we visited a few startups there. We visited a few of these accelerators and incubators in the Bay Area. Got to visit Google. A lot of inspirational leaders we got to meet and speak. Right, which is when the idea of even being an entrepreneur, what it actually means, right? And uh, I kind of found what I was missing in my corporate life. Right, I kind of found that hey, this is the answer to what I'm missing in my corporate life now. Right, the one thing that I was missing the most was the fact that while I was learning constantly, while I was applying myself constantly to new things, uh, I couldn't kind of let the feedback loop cycle complete. Right? When you're working for an MNC, you work for somebody who's in Philippines, the end user is in Philippines, or the problem faced by somebody in Philippines, but then you are solving for that from here in India without having a direct connect to the person who's having this problem, right? You get to talk to a lot of proxy people to understand the problem, and the feedback also flows to you through a lot of proxy interfaces, right? So that to me was something that I was craving for, and the corporate world would have never given me that kind of a experience. And this exposure to startups through the Fulbright scholarship kind of, in a way, make help me make the decision that the only next logical thing for me to do was to become an entrepreneur. That's kind of how it happened, right? Brief history of time.
Thank you, Sham, for sharing your journey. This is important because I'm sure a lot of viewers uh, are in the midst of deciding, okay, is this the path? Because now they have, let's say, made some money, um, have understood how work happens, but at the same time have the same let's say hunger when they were in their first stage of their career. So it really helps. Thank you for sharing that, Sham. Just a follow-up question here: what are some of the top, let's say, experiences or skills that you have gained from your corporate experience and are using to your advantage at this stage of your, let's say, transition or your growth? And what are the some of the skills and experience you would advise to unlearn when you would want to be part of a industry that promotes flexibility and flexibility in that way? Yeah.
Right. So I think one good thing after one becoming a startup entrepreneur after like roughly around 18 years of corporate career was that you get to do structured thinking, right? You take a problem, you break it into pieces, right? You're able to understand the problem better, right? You're able to appreciate, you're able to empathize with the user who's having the problem, right? Because you've constantly been looking at solving problems for your clients, right, in the corporate world. So actually, I think problem solving, structured thinking, uh, and the confidence that if you did it, if you kind of applied yourself correctly, you can solve it, right? No problem is unsurmountable, right? So because you face through that, right? And lastly, building a team, like mentoring the team, growing the team along with you, knowing what your team needs from you as much as what you need from them, right? And kind of constantly maintaining this balance is something that I think the corporate life has taught me enough, because I've always considered myself to be, and again, people have told me this as well, that I lead by example, right? I show how it's done, right? So when we hire a new marketing person, I tell them, hey, this is how I have done this before, right? So I'm able to or I hire a new developer, I tell them that, hey, this is how I have. So I am able to appreciate what they are going through, right? I can appreciate what a content writer goes through when they have to write a blog, because I have done that before, right? I can appreciate what a developer goes through, right? If they make mistakes, I can think and say, why would that person have made that mistake, right? Because I have done that mistake before. So I'm able to appreciate people better. I'm able to appreciate their weaknesses better. I'm able to appreciate their strengths better, right? And because you've done that, right? You've kind of been with teams, you've grown teams in the corporate world, and you understand the people dynamics. You understand who does what well, and what kind of environment do people need to thrive, survive, perform, and all that. So those are things I would say have been things that I've gotten from the corporate world. The things that I had to unlearn extremely, and again, obviously technology, right? The experience of talking to people, right? I was a consultant, so I always had to wear the hat of the end user, right? Being a consultant, you always put yourself in the other person's shoes and think on their behalf, right? So that's that kind of a thinking, right? Where you're not talking about what you want to gain from it, right? You want to talk about what they have to gain from it, right? So those are the things I would say. The mindset I would say are the things that I've probably gained from the corporate world, right? Things that I had to, I think, again, connecting the dots back, things where I struggled was that in the corporate world, it's like a game of cricket, right? I'm an opener. I come open. My job is done. I'm gone. Right. I'm a consultant. I come consult, give a roadmap. I'm gone. Somebody else is implementing my suggestions, right? So you in a corporate world, you wear one hat, right? And you want to be a specialist in that role, and you deliver that role, and then once your job is done, you're done, right? But as an entrepreneur, you've got to do everything, right? So from customer support to building the technology to kind of convincing customers to getting brickbats to getting right, to facing the fiddle, the wrath of some unsatisfied customers, you've got to face everything, right? So sometimes that that doing all these roles and making sense of all of that and bringing together is something that a corporate world does not teach you, right? Because you kind of become a specialist in a way as you grow up the career ladder in a corporate world, right? That is number one. Number two is that you get a lot of support system in a corporate world, right? So you've got to hire, tell the HR team, they go hire, right? You've got to train somebody, you tell the L&D department, they go train your team, and then bring them back to you, right? So you get used to a lot of support system around you that solves that is supporting you, getting the work done for you, right? But again, in the entrepreneur as a startup world, you get to do everything. So there's no support system. Uh, so you're not walking, like, to take an example, uh, you're a circus artist without any safety net in below you, right? So you fall, you break your leg, right? So there's no safety net catching you. So that obviously was a new experience and a new way to do that. And last but not the least, I think the ego, letting go of the ego was a very big challenge, right? Because in the corporate world, your designation, your position in the company, right, and what you've done historically, and kind of is your business card to talk to people, right? Hey, I'm director of Cognizant. I've done this before. Now your meeting is happening with a client, and the client also accepts you for the person that you are, right? But in a startup world, people don't care, right? Literally, hey, what I mean, you could be 20 years experience. I don't care. Right? Tell me if your solution works for me or not, right? Tell me 1 rupee that I pay, is it going to give me a benefit or not? So it's kind of, it becomes very, very sure. So I had to, I mean, losing the ego part was little challenging because you're waiting for somebody to have a meeting with somebody. You're waiting there for 2 hours in front of their cabin, and then they coolly come out and say, "Hey, sorry, I can't talk to you today. Got to talk tomorrow," right? So now you're kind of saying, "Hey, do you even know who I am? Do you even know that I am like so and so," right? You have to lose all that, right? None of your medals or none of your badges of honor actually matter to when you're in the entrepreneurial world, right? So anyway, so that's kind of, I would say, unlearning. Lastly, um, the startup world, right? The one thing that I learned, or I would say unlearned in my first startup after failing, was that you've got to solve the hard problems first, right? Uh, like, for example, I'm a technology guy, right? So solving technology problem is the easiest thing for me, right? What I'm not comfortable, or what I was not comfortable solving, is the business part of it, right? Is the finance part of it, right? Is the unit economics part of it, right? So because you don't get to think of that way in the corporate world, right? Uh, so I was like, when I was in the first startup, I started to solve the problems that I could solve easily because I was comfortable solving, right? And then I left, like, it's almost like you're preparing for the exam. You read all the chapters that you like reading, right? And then you leave all the tough chapters for later. But then the question paper is all from those tough chapters, right? So that's what entrepreneurship is, right? The question paper is always going to be tough, right? You can't prepare for that by doing things that you like doing, right? You got to do the things that you don't like doing, the hard things first, and solve them first before you. So that's what I did with my second startup. I said, I'm going to be 10,000 feet away from technology, right? Don't show me the app, right? Don't show me the code. I don't want to come there, right? I want to be on the ground. I want to go meet customers. I want to do the hard stuff, right? I in my second startup, I said, I'm going to outsource my technology. I'm not going to keep it close to me, because the moment I keep it close to me, you get sucked into it, right? Because that's what I love doing. So those are the things I think I had to unlearn uh, in this transition.
Thank you, Sham, for sharing your journey, your story, and I mean, it's a lot of hard work, and thank you for sharing that. Sham, what according to you is the future of work? It has several meanings. Everyone has their perspective, but I would want your perspective on the future of work.
Yeah, I mean, there's too many things, right? I don't want to even go into areas where I'm not. I can't even call myself knowledgeable. Forget about being an expert, right? Uh, uh, the realms of, like, people talk about metaverses, and people talk about AI. People talk about how technology is going to shape the future of work, right? So I'm not even qualified to talk about all of this. All of this is going to significant impact, but I'm not qualified enough to paint a picture with those technologies in mind, right? But what I'm comfortable talking about, what I'm at least fairly knowledgeable enough is about the fact that uh, work and workplace no longer need to be linked with each other, right? So, I mean, previously, I mean, work. I mean, in fact, I mean, uh, they got so intertwined, right? So the office or the workplace and work got so intertwined that now we are now slowly trying to kind of weave them apart, right? So I think that if that weaving apart and kind of completely disconnecting work and workplace, uh, and when you do that, a lot of other things also get disconnected, right? So uh, work time, when all the questions, right? When, what, why, how, all of that get to start to get reimagined, right? So with respect to work, right, how you do work, right, how you communicate, when you work, right, uh, and whom do you work with, right, on what do you work, uh, and obviously where you work, right, a lot of these things become intertwined, right, and all of these become the variables that people can play around with flexibly based on their role, their aspirations, and what they want to do with life, right? So I think that's one fundamental thing that we are seeing happen in front of us, right? And in that sense, uh, the future of work is actually taking a backseat a little bit in terms of future of living and lifestyle and work, right? So the order is now flipping, right? So previously, like I shifted to Bangalore because my job was in Bangalore. I joined Infosys in Bangalore, right? So I shifted from Chennai to Bangalore just to have the job Infosys offered to me, right? So I no longer can imagine doing that in my life, right? Uh, so I'm comfortable where I am. So I will let. So my decisions are now based on where I want to live and how I want to live, and then how I want to work as a supporting factor to that, rather than it being the primary factor deciding how I live, right? So I think that is another way in which people are seeing future of work, right? And obviously it's blowing up boundaries, right? Cross border work is happening, right? It's also blowing up the definition of what is it to be an employee, right? uh, like what does it actually mean, right? So and is that the only way in which you can get work done, right? So it's a culmination of a lot of things that have happened in the past. So from gig economy, freelancing, to remote work, and hybrid work, and everything is kind of coming together, and obviously technology advancements in this place, right, for that allow us to do communication like the one that we're doing now. So all of this is kind of coming together at the right time, in my opinion, and that's going to fundamentally change how we have worked. And what it is going to be is going to be is shaping, right? It's getting shaped along the way, right? And one fundamental uh, uh, premise that we took when starting Go Floaters is that uh, the workplace, like I said, the work and workplace are getting intertwined. The workplace will get only completely intertwined from work, right? An office or a job and where you work will only get completely intertwined when the workplace becomes a utility, right? Uh, if it's an asset, or if it's a fixed asset that you have, right? You're never going to be able to de-link it completely from work, right? Because there is, you whether you say it or not, there is a center of gravity for your company, right? If you say my office is in BKC in Mumbai, that's the center of gravity of your office. How much ever you try to do, uh, people closer to that will always get a better, will have the proximity advantage, right? Whether you like it or not, right? How much ever you try to run around it, it's not going to happen. So that's when we said, like, we have to reimagine. First, we have to reimagine office or reimagine workplace, right? And make it make it a equity so that it can be intertwined in, or it can be brought in into the equation whenever you want it, and however you want it, right? Rather than it being that elephant in the room that always you have to work around, right? So that's kind of how I see future work shaping, and yeah, I mean, this, like, it's just happening in front of us, or I won't even uh, paint a picture that I don't know, right? It's just happening as we speak.
Thank you, Sham, for sharing that. Sham, I would love to know more about how Go Floaters and the team is creating impact with some of the partners that you are working with. And I'm a little curious to know, how have you created a win-win situation with some of the giants like Acco, Decathlon? I would love to get insights there as well.
Right. So like I said, right? So we Go Floaters. Our attempt is to make office or a workspace a utility, right? Like how uh, we switch on or we want a cab ride, we book it then, right? Uh, like we've gotten used to so many things, right? E-commerce, right? You want to buy something, you just order it online. So if all of this has become a utility that you need it, you take it on demand, right? So that's what we started to do with co-floaters, where we said, uh, so if you had one office or few offices, they become constraining, right? So the only way to imagine office or workplace as utility is to have a massive network of workplaces that you can use on a short-term basis, right? Whatever short-term means to you, right? If it's an hour or it's like it's a few hours in a day, it's like for a day, right? So you kind of you use it and book it and use it for a extremely short duration, right? And you're no longer constrained to going back to the same place every day, right? So you choose from the network, right? So you choose what you want, what makes sense for you for that day, right? And also the fact that you don't need to take it like you don't need to commit for it, right? So it's truly a utility, right? So you're not like you don't pay electricity bill, you don't pay like 10,000 rupees ahead of time. Once you've used electricity, you pay for it, right? Once you use the water, you pay for it, right? So we truly wanted to kind of do that, right? You only pay for the time that you've used it for, right? And you have a network rather than one single place available to you that you call it your workplace, right? So that's the fundamental product that GoFloaters delivers is a network of workplaces. And again, when I say work, I mean for desks, meeting, all types of works, right? Whether it's a collaborative work or heads down work, right? Or like two people sitting together working, any kind of work, right? So creating a workplace network that is so dense and so distributed that you can walk into a place near your house, right? You don't have to commute the traditional way. You can just walk into a workplace near where you live and make it your office for that short duration, right? So that's the fundamental product that we're delivering. Now, uh, uh, we started in 2018, like trying to crack this problem, and primarily we were cracking this for freelancers, we were cracking this for solopreneurs, we were cracking this for independent professionals like chartered accountants, architects, trainers, and many people, right? So basically, single man, one person company kind of operations, right? But then once COVID happened, and we did try, right? We did try pitching Go Floaters as a concept to a lot of corporates even before the pandemic happened, right? But a very tough sell, right? It is an extremely difficult uphill journey to sell a concept like that and to be appreciated by a corporate pre-COVID, right? And once COVID happened, and we all know what happened with respect to the thinking of corporates with respect to embracing remote work and work from home and all that. So then a lot of companies, as you know, um, started to redesign their workplace policies, right? A lot of companies said a single city or a single office building is no longer going to define who we are, right? Is no longer going to constrain who we are also, right? So it's not going to limit our growth by saying that we are a Bangalore-based startup or we are a Mumbai-based company or whatever, right? So everybody started to kind of imagine their own identity as no longer tied to the sixth floor of some building built by somebody. They started to imagine themselves as a company that is like a pan India for that matter first, and then maybe global as the next one, right? So where anybody and everybody they could tap into their the talent pool from anywhere across India and anywhere across the world. So that's when we started to work across these companies. So ChargeBee, for example, uh, they decided during the pandemic, during the wave one, towards the end of wave one of the pandemic, they decided that they're going to be a remote first organization, right? They were in fact just about the pandemic, they were actually signing up a very large real estate deal in the World Trade Center in Chennai, right? So the first building that was coming up in World Trade Center, they were almost going to sign that. Uh, Pandemic happened, and they decided that that's not what they see as their future, right? They see ChargeBee's future as a remote first company, right? So when they did that, and then when Wave Two cleared off and all that, they wanted to kind of create what they call it adaptive workplace model, right? So whatever workplace suits employees need for that day, for that time, uh, Chargebee will enable that employee with that kind of a workplace, right? So whether the workplace is home or workplace is the corporate HQ or the workplace is a co-working space near the employee's residence, Chargebee would take a responsibility of enabling this adaptive workplace so that the employee decides, right, when they work, where they work, with whom they work, and for how long they work in a given day, and how they plan their schedule. It was completely left to the employee to take this decision, right, to kind of democratize that decision in the hands of the employee. So that's when we started to. That's when they explored all the probably solutions that other solutions that are there, and figured out that none of that was comprehensively addressing what they wanted to do because their employees are already in 16, 17 different cities across India, right? So you needed a very distributed network of workspaces for you to be able to solve for everybody, right? One co-working brand can only solve for you in like 4 or 5 cities, right? Uh, so anyway, so that's when we got introduced to them, and they found our solution to be closely matching to what they wanted. So a pilot was run, and after the pilot was, uh, I mean, what is it? Unexpectedly super successful. Right? They expected like probably 10% of their employee workforce to sign up, but then even in the first week, like more than 40% signed up, uh, and they thought they'll probably have 100 bookings by the end of the first month. They probably had like 400 bookings at the end of the first month, right? So basically, uh, 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 it proved beyond any doubt that this is what their employees wanted. So, and contrary to the fact that many corporate leaders assume, employees don't want they want remote work, but doesn't mean that they want work from home, right? So they want the flexibility to be remote. They don't want to come to your corporate HQ, right? Even if they're in the same city, they don't want to commute an hour and a half each way, right? So I mean, it will pro beyond doubt that even employees want uh, they want a third place. They want something to be called an office, right? They don't. The employees only hate your corporate HQ, right? It's not that they hate offices. It's not that they hate a place out of their comfortable home, right? So it pro beyond doubt that even without putting policies, without putting uh, prescriptive measures, employees, if you enable them, they would be open to come collaborate in person, build the team bonding, right? Do all the things that you want them to do to kind of maintain and foster the culture, right? You don't have to kind of make them do it, right? So they everybody is willing to do that, provided that you gave them the flexibility also along the way, right? If you took away the flexibility and you said I'm going to only focus on doing all of that, then that's where the ideologies kind of collide. And it's a dirty collision also, right? So you know how much of tussle is happening between the the heads of the corporates and their employees in many places. Yeah. So
Interesting.
and so similar, right? And different companies. Sorry, I kind of didn't address your question holistically, right? So different companies need different types of, and different companies even today are solving for different things with respect to remote work, right? There are some companies that are very early in the stage. They are solving for infrastructural problems and productivity problems, right? There are some companies that are solving for collaborative work kind of problems, right? There are some companies that are higher up in that maturity curve. Now they're solving for intra-team collaboration and employee engagement, right? There are other companies now that are solely focusing on solving for culture, right, and for solving innovation, and idea sharing and all, right. So different companies that have embraced remote work, they are in different levels of maturity and they're solving for different things, right? And hence they also need different kinds of solutions along the way, right? And we being that solution provider, it's very interesting for us to kind of straddle across all these levels of maturity and levels of problems, right? So it's no longer, like you said, it's no longer a booking platform. We are trying to holistically solve for providing the underlying infrastructure for a company to be remote first, right? And it means different things to different companies, and that's where the fun is.
So, what are some of the less talked insights that are being outside? Like when you said, and like employees really want flexibility, right? We understand that travel takes a lot of time, right? I'm just giving an example. But what are some of the interesting findings? Because I mean, during with that percentage that you mentioned, 40% of them they were like they wanted to go flexible. But I'm just saying, in your journey, what were some of the interesting findings which you would like to address to the remote leaders or the remote transformation leaders in the respective organizations, that what, these are also some of the reasons why they want to go flexible.
Right. So I think, like I said, one is that I think the priorities that an individual attaches to their ID card, their identity in the company, an employee number has changed significantly, right? So, I mean, if for example, right, when I was doing recruitment, when I was hiring for my own teams in Cognizant, if I would see a resume that had like 3, 4 job switches in a matter of 3 years, I would, without even talking to the candidate, I would reject the resume, saying that, hey, this person is not dependable, right? He or she is switching jobs so frequently. That's become a norm today, right? So people are not like they're not trying to build a career with a company, right? They're trying to build their career, and your company just happens to be a means to kind of do that, right? So that is one fundamental shift that it is difficult for employer some corporate leaders to digest, right? So the digest that hey, I'm employees don't give that much respect and loyalty. They don't attach that much themselves that much to a company any longer, right? That's the reality, right? So that reality is kind of still difficult for many people to absorb it, right? So that is number one, right? Number two is that so today a lot of leaders, I mean, for I think maybe that's how our brains are wired, or maybe that's how we find it easy to rationalize or logically think, is that everything is put in a binary mode, right? It's an office or remote work, right? It's like and remote work and work from home, right? And when somebody says I want flexibility, they feel okay. You want to sit at home and you want to like do your personal work, or you want to moonlight, right? A lot of things that get associated like automatically, they get branded, right, to the fact, right? I think um, a lot of these things have to be unlearned, right? So remote work is not work from home, right? So and when you say you're a remote first company, it doesn't mean that you can't have an office, right? It doesn't mean that you can't have in-person interactions. It doesn't mean that uh, people, I mean, so because the moment you say, hey, I'm remote, then people say, hey, what about, people start feeling lonely? What if people cannot collaborate, or people don't, they become siloed, right? So teams get siloed, right? Innovation cannot happen, right? So we immediately start associating a lot of things to remote work. But if you really take a step back and understand, remote, I mean, so the extreme 100% remote, maybe you get into some of that, right? But you don't, that's not what everybody's prescribing, right? A doctor is not, the remote work doctor is not prescribing 100% remote, right? uh, so like with a healthy lifestyle, you have to do a lot of, you have to balance a lot of things, right? And that balance is what people are not able to appreciate, is one insight. And as I talk to many people, right, the moment leaders, and when I'm pitching to them, or when I hear what their apprehensions, right? So there's a lot of bias in the conversations, right? So that bias has to be, which means that that bias can be only removed with a lot of education, a lot of companies setting examples. We spoke about that, right? A lot of companies that are doing it correctly have to show the examples and how they're doing it correctly, and so on and so forth, right? So that is one learning I think I would have, being in the almost in the roller coaster. Go Floaters is also having the front cabin seat along with other companies that are being remote, right? Because we are kind of driving, we are kind of going through the ups and downs as the other companies has been doing, right? So being having that front seat, front row, first row seat, this is one thing, right? Secondly, the importance of trusting your employees is undervalued quite a bit, right? So I think the companies that by default trust, right? So again, I think this is, I think how do I say it? Uh, it's probably how our brains think. We always try to build, take the lowest common denominator, and try to build a solution for the lowest common denominator, right? So some employee will not will kind of break the rules, right? So so if for 1% of the employees who might not be productive when given that flexibility, right? We end up penalizing the 99% employees who will be even more productive when they are flexible, right? So by kind of taking this will go wrong, right? So some employee might not work at all, right? Some employees do quite quitting, right? So but how many, what percentage of employees are we talking about, right? For a very small minuscule percentage of your team members who might end up doing that, you end up penalizing the rest of the crowd that is going to responsibly work in a flexible and remote first setting, right? So that's the other thing, right? So is to kind of not to build solutions for that uh, the edge scenarios, right? So we end up building a safety net around the edge scenarios, and the moment you start thinking about edge scenarios and start to build a safety net, you become like a ironclad and China walled uh, policy, right? Uh, right. You have to check in, you have to check out, your time will be monitored, you have to report, right? You have to take permission, right? So just it just like weighs down on a lot of employees who truly value, right? And take responsibility of being offered the flexibility to work remotely, right? So coming back to the question that you asked me, so those employers who have taken that leap of faith and said that by default I trust every employee that I have in my company, right? Whether it's a junior guy or it's a senior most guy, right? I trust everybody, right? And they let the teams, the individuals, kind of organically figure out what works for them, right? I know this can be unnerving because you don't control as a leader. You want to have control on what happens, right? You don't want to you don't want it to be a chaotic thing. But like with uh, philosophy, I mean, like lot of team formation, for example, theories, right? There is storm, then there's a little bit of norming, then you get performing, right? So you have to go through the storm before some kind of patterns start to emerge, and some kind of structure starts to emerge from the whole thing, right? So it's to kind of the first few years of you embracing remote first is to kind of take that back seat and let your teams and individuals kind of to kind of shape your workplace policies and work patterns and rhythms is something that I've seen work better rather than companies that take a prescriptive approach, right? Because what data point do you have to say your prescriptive approach is for 2 days a week at the office, 3 days a week? How do you know that even works, right? And is that going to bring the productivity that you want for, right? Or is that going to bring the collaboration that you're aspiring for, right? You never know that, right? So it's basically it's to assume that you don't know anything and let things happen organically, and then you look at the data behind it and then figure out what's happening, right? It's like the universe, right? You can't control anything in the universe, right? You can just observe what a black hole is doing, and then, oh, this is what black holes are, right? So you have to observe and absorb, and then formulate your theories on top of it, right? Formulate a hypothesis on top of it, rather than saying that defining what it is and then trying to force fit everything into that your definition, right? That's the, I think, what companies are doing wrong, in my opinion, by going the prescriptive approach.
Thank you, Sham, for sharing this. I think it's like you're breathing this space. I think the experiences that you shared gave us a very detailed understanding of what's happening at both the front speed, the teams as well as the leaders who are building and managing these teams. Sham, I have a very interesting question for you. One, because I know that you're good with the data points. It's there on your, on the top of your mind, because a couple of weeks ago where we were interacting, you mentioned about some of the fantastic data points. So where do you see the flexible workspaces as an industry, or for that matter, the lifestyle of folks who are wanting to move in this direction? One, I would love to know the global data point if you have. Two, the Asian data point if you have. And three, the Indian data point if you have.
Right. So I probably don't have. I have the global and probably the Indian data point, right? So
Sure,
one,
sure,
India, for example, co-working. Again, I take co-working as the benchmark here, but
sure.
I mean, within co-working, there's a particular segment that, for example, GoFlows work. I mean, we work with the on-demand part of co-working, right? So uh, but there is the more traditional co-working also involved, right? So anyway, so coming back, I think the flex industry, flex real estate industry, as it's broadly called, and co-working is a subsection of that. That India is kind of leading the way, right? India's the amount of real estate that's been absorbed. I think somebody was saying that in by 2025, almost 50% of commercial real estate that gets built in a year will be absorbed by co-working, right? So imagine you've got traditional offices, you've got retail, you've got all the other forms of commercial real estate, right? Uh, 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 and within that, if somebody says that the projection in India is like 50% of real estate is going to be absorbed by co-working, it's a huge number, right? And not so long ago, right? In 4 years back, 5 years back, this was in the lower higher single digits, right? So from higher single digits to getting to 50%, it's a huge absorption there, right? So that is one very telling data point that um, I mean, so whether companies are adapting a remote first approach to work or not, it's a very telling data
Or maybe
point that,
hybrid. Or maybe hybrid.
or maybe hybrid, right?
Yeah.
So it's a very telling point that companies do, even the hardcore return to office companies also realize that uh, they cannot have their say forever, right? They know that they have to be flexible with their real estate, right? Because they don't really know uh, how they are going to grow and whether all the employees are going to come to the office even once in a while and how frequently they're going to come. So nobody knows. Everybody knows underneath that they don't have the answers, right? Which is why co-working adoption is kind of increasing quite a bit, right? So though there's been a slowdown in 2023, right? So 2022, almost somebody was saying like more like a revenge, uh, right? So you were 2 years remote, everybody was stuck, right? Nobody could come out of their houses, right? So the moment the floodgate, it's almost like a floodgate opening, right? Everybody wanted to kind of come back and occupy offices, right? So that happened, and again the rates were very conducive. The seats were available at much lesser prices, so there was like a lot of supply, pent up supply, and there's a lot of demand that wanted to kind of take it up, so it happened, right? But 2023 across the board in India, you will see there's a little bit of slowdown, so it's not as high as it was in 2022 or even in the first half of 2023. So second half of 2023 has slowed down. You start to see uh, the occupancy percentages. Like a lot of the co-working spaces were running at 90-95% occupancy. So that those are coming down a little bit because of the slowing down. But it has not slowed down the pre-pandemic levels. Right? It's still faster than it was, right? But globally, if you see the trend is not. I mean, India, like I said, is leading the way in terms of the co-working industry absorption, right? So you don't see the world over, you don't see as much as co-working I mean square feet being absorbed as it is here, right? and uh, and secondly, what you see also is that a lot of larger companies in India uh, are taking up like co-working, right? They're kind of uh, uh, I think the right word, if I have to use it from the industry, is that they're trying to have a diversity in their portfolio of real estate, right? So while they have traditional conventional offices or spaces, dedicated spaces, IT parks, and those kind of things, they're also trying to diversify into all of this, right? That's one thing that's happening, right? And one very interesting, it's not a data point, but it's more anecdotal evidence, is that now you see a change in how offices are getting designed in India, right? So, uh, for example, right, when co-working was in its peak, uh, you a lot of the co-working brands, right? I mean, I don't want to name them. A lot of them were just putting seats, right? And they're trying to optimize on it. Right? So, for example, when co-working probably began, or even if you take a grade A office building, right? They would give as much as 150 square feet per employee, right? So if you take let's say a Cognizant office or a Deloitte's office, or you would have every employee would enjoy roughly around 150 square feet or 135 square feet of real estate space, right? And this includes pantry, common area, canteen, all of it put together. But still, right, each employee has that is a metric, right? But when co-working picked up and it was kind of growing extremely rapidly, even after pandemic, it came down to less than 50 square feet per employee, right? 35 square feet, 40 square feet per employee. So you can imagine that you're kind of sitting in like it's like working inside an aircraft, right? You have You have guardrails here, you have guardrails here, you have to work this way, right? So that's how claustrophobic some of these cover. And also the fact that because of the COVID fear, um, everybody wanted a private space, right? Everybody wanted like a very very close space, right? And then the moment you put a lot of closed spaces, it is always like an office within an office, a container, right? You go to a building, you see a lot of containers, right? So each container has like one team or like a bunch of people, right? So it became very very people will plaster everything around, right? All transparent walls got replaced with opaque walls, right? So it was very very claustrophobic, right? But now if you see like in 2023, uh, employers have realized that collaborative spaces, giving more freedom for people to walk around, right? To kind of go beyond their team boundaries to meet somebody, right? Those are coming into the design of offices that I see now, right? So and the fact that, and also the fact that they're getting more trendier for sure, is because you've got to give an employee a reason to come to office, right? Because the reason to come to office is no longer to open up a laptop and connect to a great Wi-Fi and work, right? Or have an AC, right? And I've had, like, when I joined Infosys, right? I would, a lot of us would go to the office because our homes did not have AC, right? The offices had AC, right? You could go and sit in AC and have coffee, hot coffee, right? And cold air around you was like a great combination, right? So you would go to office because you would not have UPS at home, right? You would lose power at home, but the office would always be 24/7 running, right? So anyway, and now we don't go to office for those pleasures, right? I mean, I have AC at home, and I have coffee. I can get coffee at home anytime I want, and I can Swiggy in anything that I want at home, right? So people are going into the office for that experience of being with somebody, right? Collaborating with somebody to kind of to create new connections, right? To grow in their career, to be aware of the situation around, right? So employers are also trying to create those reasons for people to come to the office, right? And the design of the workspace is actually kind of becoming a critical element, right? So sometime back I saw Capgemini posts on LinkedIn where they've completely redesigned all their European offices, and some of the Indian offices are getting redesigned as well, right? So, and then you don't see desks in the redesign. You just see a lot of pods. You see a lot of very open floor area, right? A lot of free area for people to walk around. A lot of greenery within the floor space, right? A lot of, you can anyway. So I think the open plan offices that we were used to seeing before, right, have kind of gotten reinvented in this hybrid world, because now the purpose of the office is not a desk and a table with a plug point to connect your laptop and work, right? The purpose of the office has kind of gotten changed, and hence the design of the offices are also changing in that way.
Thank you, Shyam, for sharing wonderful insights. I quickly remembered a month ago I was at the KPMG office. One of my very good friend, he works at KPMG, just 2 miles from my home, and I was like, has this place been designed by like the folks who are designing co-working spaces? So yeah, thank you for sharing that. I mean, I experienced, and fantastic. Yeah. So that is also like, I mean, even the traditional uh, let's say spaces are also trying to keep up with the time. So I
Yes,
think this is something that
correct,
I
absolutely.
so thank you, Sham, for joining this wonderful conversation, sharing some of the fantastic insights, sharing how Go Floaters is creating impact not only for single business owners, but also the folks with with having a team size of 100, 500, and helping them in the transition. So before we end this conversation, do you have something to share with the viewers, and also if someone would like to connect with you, how do they reach out to you?
Yeah, the best way is LinkedIn, right? So I'm Sham Go Floaters on LinkedIn. If you just search, you should be able to get me. And I'm kind of I spend quite a bit of my time on LinkedIn every alternate day. So I'll certainly respond to people if they connect with me or message me there. And then obviously depending on the conversation, we can take it forward with a phone call or a Google Meet call and so on and so forth, right? So I think that's the second part of the question that you asked me. I think on the first part of the question that you asked me, I think we've already covered a lot of ground on this. The One bit of advice, like I said earlier on, is to, for companies that are still cat on the wall. A lot of companies still are cat on the wall in terms of deciding which way to go. So the first thing I will say is like uh, cat on the wall situation is not only confusing to you, right? It's very very unsettling to your team members as well, right? They've got to know what who are they working for, right? They've got to know uh, what it is that they should expect in the few months to a year to come, right? That is number one, right? Number two is like I also see a lot of companies who are trying to, for lack of a better analogy, right? They're trying to serve the pill, candy coated pill, right? So they say hybrid but or flexible, but then the eventual intention is to bring everybody back to the office, right? And I'm not saying no to this, right? I'm not like I'm not saying that everybody has. I mean, remote first is the only solution or hybrid is the only solution for every company. I'm not saying that at all, right? So each company has to figure out what works best for them, right? But all I'm trying to say is like you've got to be very candid and clear with your team members that this is what your identity, this is what you see as your identity for your company is, right? And you have to rationalize that with your teams, right? Lot of what I also see a lot of leaders kind of like, I mean, even you take the Facebook tussle that's happening, or IBM tussle that's happening, or Amazon tussle that's happening, or closer back home, TCS, right? So the dictum is going on, right? Hey, we will be 4 days uh, I mean, in the office from next week onwards, right? Even Google for that matter, right? So people are not taking the time to rationalize this and explain this to their employees as to why they are doing that and supporting that with data points, right? If you don't have data points, it's probably better to say you don't have it, right? Rather than trying to say that you've decided and thou shalt follow it, right? So I think that the more democratic approach would actually be more better, right? It may take longer, right? Because a lot of people, I think, fear that the moment you kind of bring in a little bit of democracy, the decision making can get prolonged, or the transition may get prolonged, right? But it's a much more sustainable transition than you trying to abruptly uh, change the gear, right? Because uh, it's like if you empathize on behalf of the employee, right? They have rewired everything around being remote, right? Where their kids go to school, how they are doing their daily chores and routines, right? Everything is, I mean, how they take care of their parents or elderly people in the house, how they're sharing their responsibilities with the spouse, or taking care of other things that they like doing it. A lot of things people have rewired it based on the assumption that they'll have the flexibility to work when and where and how they would work, right? So if you're snatching that away from them, you will have to give them time to kind of rewire it. I'm not saying that uh, it's a wrong decision, right? Just that be considerate of the fact that it's not about you're taking too many things away from your team members, right? By doing that, and be conscious that be respectful of that, uh, and give them the rationale as to why you're doing that, and then let the decision for them to make, right? Whether they want to continue shift, relocate, and shift, or they want to look for another job, right? So my own like very close in my circle, right? So they just got an email saying that coming October 1st, you either report to the office or you quit, right? That's not what you that's not what you would expect from a leader to come to, right? So anyway, so I think those decisions why those decisions, I respect those decisions from leaders who say that office is the way to go, right? I don't believe in remote. I respect that, right? And it's your belief, right? I'm nobody to say you're wrong and I'm correct, right? But if you're implementing that, then be conscious and be empathetic to your team and implement it. Bring like drive that by consensus rather than driving it by force is probably what I would say as a passing thought. I know this is not. It's easy to say, right? It will take the moment you open it up for discussion, you're going to have all sorts of ifs and buts and questions and all that. But I think that's you have to take that, right? You can't like what you can't do what COVID did to us, right? You COVID did not ask you whether you wanted to get sick or not, right? Or whether you want to work from home or not. COVID did not ask you. COVID kind of became that uh, how do I say it authoritative stance. COVID took that stance, but you can't as a leader take that kind of stance. Is my opinion.
Thank you, Sham. Thank you for sharing that wonderful insight. It really helps. And thank you, viewers, for joining us and listening to this podcast. And I promise I'll keep getting some of the fantastic folks from the industry to uh, give you the latest insights, give their learnings, their perspectives. I think that is what matters a lot. And I am personally a strong advocate of peer-to-peer learning. So I think in a way, Sham, I have also learned and gained a lot of insights, which consciously
Likewise,
or
yeah.
subconsciously I will be using it in whatever work I do. So thank you, Sham, once again.
No, pleasure being here, Sagar, and thanks for kind of the kind of the stream of questions that I mean. So each of the answers had to think before answering, because I mean it kind of made you do that, and I'm even if like 1%